We are at the Over the Horizon podcast, sponsored by the Atlantic Canadian Aerospace and Defence Association. I'm Alan Dale, Jerry Carew. We are Gale Force Winds, and we're at the Maritime Arctic Safety and Security Conversation, and it is fun to be in conversation with the folks that are here today. Bruce, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, Al. First of all, thanks very much for the invitation to join you at the booth here. I'm Bruce Belliveau. I'm currently the president of CFN Consultants Atlantic Incorporated out of Halifax, and I'm a good old blue-nosed boy. Grew up and went to school in Dartmouth, but I consider Malagash on the north coast of Nova Scotia my home. Spent all weekends and summers there as a kid, growing up in the Northumberland Strait, in the water every day, which generated a love for the high seas. And at 18, graduated from high school, ran away from home, and joined the Canadian Navy. And spent 32 years in the Navy, and was lucky enough to command a couple of ships, and the fleet commander, and postings overseas with NATO. And who knew it? At the 32-year mark of my career, just before I retired, my job was running all of NATO's maritime operations out of their headquarters in Northwood in the UK, and I was fighting pirates.
So you two must know each other well, do you?
We have come across our paths have crossed many times over the years.
I only did 9 years in the reserves, so this man did a lot longer, as you.
Our paths have crossed, Bruce, and you were a great fellow to serve with, and you served your country well, and you continue to serve in a different capacity. But here we are today having a conversation about all things maritime, Arctic, safety and security, and I'm sure you'll have a great deal to add to that conversation. You did fairly well for a guy from Dartmouth, not too bad. Hey?
Yeah,
you joined the Navy to see the world.
The odds.
Yeah, there you go. That's good for you, man. That's fantastic. So, Bruce, tell me a little bit about what you're doing in the conference right now. What's your goal here?
So it's a fantastic conference. The speakers that they've lined up are fabulous, and learning a lot and sharing a lot. Mm-hmm. My aim here is to network with the other participants, clearly, to contribute if I can. The Arctic is a different region to operate in, and I certainly did some work in the Arctic when I was in the Navy, when I was the Chief of Staff Operations in Halifax and running exercises like Op Nanook, and as well as when I was at Canada Command. But it's a different place to operate. It's a very challenging place. And I would equate it to the counter-piracy operation that I ran in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean is a vast piece of real estate, much like our Arctic or much like Canada in general. And that operation was probably the largest law enforcement operation going on in the world at that time, with no law enforcement agencies engaged in it. It was all being done by international navies. And people used to say, well, merchant ships must be really happy to have all these Navy ships around. And then I would have to use a bit of a metaphor. And I said, well, picture patrolling Canada with 18 police cars.
Wow.
That's the equivalent of patrolling the Arctic or the Indian Ocean with 18 warships. Well, if you look at the Arctic, it's a similar problem. How many ships would you need to be able to effectively patrol the Arctic, to develop the recognized maritime picture, to engage with the local populations, to build relationships? It's an impossible task. And so, maritime operations in general are challenging. And you have to do the best you can with the assets you have on the day. And it's great to have a conference like this, because we're exploring what is the art of the possible, what innovations can we look forward to, engaging industry and governments to look at potential solutions. I'm also president of the Naval Association of Canada, and Al, as you know, we've got a conference coming up in October to discuss how do we operationalize all the various Arctic strategies that exist across government, across nations, and how do we bring that into perspective and provide solutions on how to operate in the Arctic, how to engage people, how to engage technology in developing a recognized air and maritime picture and subsurface picture in the Arctic. All very challenging questions. I found certainly the keynote speech by Peter MacKay and Rear Admiral Santarpia this morning were excellent stepping stones into that conference, and we'll bring a whole pile of context to it for us when we do that in October. But that's my main role here is to engage with the other participants, to let them know who I am and what I can do to help them try and find solutions to the really difficult challenges that lie ahead.
Bruce, I want to jump in there, Alan. I'm new to the defense sector, despite having a little bit of a background 30 years ago in the Navy. How concerned should Canadians be about the Arctic? From your perspective, just give us a little, based on the fact that 18 police cars patrolling Canada, I'm a little alarmed. I like the metaphor, but I am a little alarmed.
Yeah, it is alarming. I think the real issues in the Arctic, it's not so much a defense issue, but a sovereignty issue. Mm-hmm. So how do we deal with a mass casualty situation? We've got eco-tourism happening in the Arctic right now with cruise ships. What if one of them catches on fire like the cruise ship off Alaska a couple of years ago? How do we deal with that? We don't have the infrastructure in place in the Arctic to support a mass casualty environment. And I know that government and the other government departments in the military are all looking at that. But you look at today, if we have to respond to an event in the Arctic, the search and rescue aircraft have to come from Gander or Greenwood in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
That takes 24 hours to get a helicopter up there, right? You get Herc up there a little bit quicker, and you can parachute in Sartex, but not in great numbers to deal with a mass casualty situation. Mm-hmm. And if it's a ship on fire, how do you deal with that?
Amazing. Alan, I've never even thought of that at all. Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about that since I was the N3, or the Chief of Staff Operations in the headquarters here in Halifax back in 2008. As the Arctic ice recedes, there's going to be more of these types of events potentially happening, or that the potential will go up for an event happening because there will be more ships plying those waters, more people wanting to go to the Arctic. It will become more affordable as it becomes more popular. But then you have the lone venturer.
Right.
The Admiral spoke this morning about a guy who's going to paddleboard to the North Pole. I wish him well. But when he gets in trouble, it's going to be some Sartec parachuting in to rescue him.
Yeah.
Right? And risking his life. So we need to be careful about, permitting this kind of stuff, and, the government needs to take it seriously.
Bruce, when you get into these conversations around the Arctic, there's a lot of government agencies that have interest in it. There's a lot of academic institutions, there's a lot of industry partners that have interest in it, and there's a lot of nations have interest in it. There's a lot of stovepipes there. How do we break all those down?
When it comes to how do we conduct surveillance in the Arctic, which is the key piece, and that's across government. That's a whole of government issue. Back in 2007, 2008, we developed the Marine Security Operations Center concept and put one in Halifax, one for the Great Lakes, and one on the West Coast. I think we need to put the resources in to build an MSOC Arctic. And that's how you're going to build the relationships with the locals, who are the eyes and ears of the Arctic, quite frankly.
Describe MSOC to the audience.
So the Marine Security Operations Center consists of several government departments. So it's Transport Canada, Public Safety, the military, of course, the Navy and Air Force, RCMP, and Coast Guard. And they man an operations center together and look at all their various information streams and build the picture to understand the environment and to be able to identify anomalies so that threat vectors can be identified and then responded to. Very powerful use of the whole of government. Mm-hmm. And up until the MSOCs were created, I don't think that could have happened as effectively across government. So it's a very powerful organization, and I think that's what we need to look at in the Arctic.
Right.
So that we have the assessment ability. We know what's going on in our marine environment, can assess it, and then identify anomalies and react to them. I mean, it's not just from a criminality or public safety. It's also environment. You know, we can identify pollution stream and then be able to track it back to the ship that was involved, fisheries violations, a whole host of things that the organization looks at and can help government react to, provide that early warning, and then be able to identify those threat vectors, whether they're threat to the environment, threat to safety, or worst case, a threat to defense of North America.
Bruce, this conference, of course, is a great opportunity for people to talk about these issues, to bring their ideas to the table, much like I mean, I love the way you just described that. You hit everything there, maritime, Arctic safety and security, all in that conversation thus far. Tell us about the conference that you're involved in now in October.
So in October, it's the Naval Association of Canada and the Brian Mulroney Centre of Governance at St. FX University are co-sponsoring, co-hosting a small symposium of experts from across North America and Denmark to look at North American Arctic maritime security. And really what we want to look at is, you know, every nation and various departments within those nations have all developed Arctic strategies. But I'm not sure how much work has gone into how do you implement those strategies. So we want to look at it from the operational level, and how is it that we can take these strategies and operationalize them? What needs to be done to create the environment where we can build the recognized picture? You know, NORAD modernization comes into it, but that's only one component. The Admiral hit on this morning, his top priority is how do we engage the local population in the Arctic? And that's a key piece. They need to be part of this. And it kind of comes back to what I said about having an Arctic MSOC. You have to have a presence up there. The people need to build relationships. Right? It's not about visiting once a year. It's about building relationships and having a persistent presence. That's how we're going to build a better surveillance network in the Arctic. And then, of course, it's technology, which this conference is about as well. What technologies exist? What technologies do we need in order to put sensors, you know, for some level of persistent surveillance, whether it's underwater, above water, or on the surface. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm hoping that our conference can, in October, can put some words on paper that will give recommendations on what we need to focus on to operationalize those strategies.
I love the way you describe that it's about relationship development in the Arctic as well, and technology maybe behind that for sure. That's a great way to describe it. You know, Jerry and I have been in conversation with a lot of sailors in the Royal Canadian Navy over the last couple of years, and almost to a person, when we ask them what their favorite voyage has been to date, almost to a person, and I found this a little bit unusual, it was to the Arctic. They love going to the Arctic. So on that point, there's clearly a desire from the next generation of those that serve to want to be up there.
You know, our Navy sails around the world. You know, you and I have both seen all corners of the world. But very few of us have made it to the Arctic.
Right.
I've gone to the Arctic, not on board ship, but gone up as part of Operation Nanook. And you know, there's things that strike you when you go to places, you know, foreign ports that we've been to and whatnot. And I remember being in Resolute. We spent a night in Resolute, and I remember walking around outside, and it was in August, so there wasn't any snow, but you know, it was a little chilly. But I was struck by the landscape. It looked exactly the same as the landscape in the Sinai Peninsula. Or sorry, the Saudi Peninsula.
Yeah.
It looked just like the desert. It just colder.
Really?
You know, so it's you go places in the world that you would never expect to see a repeat of, and then you go to the Arctic and you see the desert.
Yeah.
It was amazing. You know, it just struck me as I looked around. It was incredible.
Right.
So, you know, you can understand why people love going to the Arctic, because it's so extraordinary. The entire geography of the Arctic is extraordinary.
Right.
And then we flew all over, we flew from Resolute to Pond Inlet, and we were on a I think it was a Fokker 100, which would have comfortably sat 4 people, and we had 8 passengers. And one of them was the premier of Nunavut at the time. Anyways, the pilot was trying to find us some polar bears to see in the wild. And eventually somebody radioed in, yeah, they're over here. So we were flying over, and there was one bubble window in the passenger section. And the premier was looking out it, and he sees these polar bears and all this. And I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Premier, I've never seen a polar bear in the wild." And he turned to me and goes, "Neither have I." And he was
Wow.
Inuit,
Right.
but he was from Frobisher Bay, or well, Iqaluit now.
Yeah.
But funny stories, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So even people in the Arctic haven't seen the Arctic
Right.
the same way. So that's I can understand why sailors would be enamored with a deployment to the Arctic, because it's a beautiful part of our country,
It's
and we need to protect it.
And we need to protect it. It sounds like all the pieces are lining up, and I love being at conferences like this where people are focusing at it. And the one that you're pulling off in October is going to be another fascinating one. Jerry, your thoughts?
I just find it fascinating listening to you. We need more people like you. It is really important to have these conversations. And to be honest with you, Alan, I'm just glad Gale Force Wind is here. I'm learning so much listening to the people talk. Unfortunately, we're not in there listening. We're doing our conversations out here. But Peter McKay, Admiral Centarpia, they're really providing some value from what you're telling us. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, my pleasure. And once again, thanks for having me on. I enjoy watching your podcasts. You guys are doing a great job, and you're doing a service to Canadians. So thank you for that.
Bruce, that's very kind of you, mate. And thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for your insight on what's going on. You have some great ideas and some great, insight into that part of the world, and your operational background now coupled with your business. I mean, good luck to you, and CFN's in good hands in Atlantic Canada. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.